This is Our View, brought to you by the people who work for you, the proud members of the Washington Federation of State Employees. The workers in the right to work for less states can form unions and collectively bargain, but it's a huge challenge. Just ask the president of the Idaho AFL-CIO. And what he wants us to know is the promoters of the right to work law say it gives workers more rights. Not so, instead it takes away many rights.
You know, the organized labor movement in a right to work state has been a challenge at best. You know, part of it is the misnomer that accompanies the verbiage of right to work. A lot of folks believe that in a right to work state, you can't organize and or become a union, and that is not true. The Idaho right to work law just simply states that if you work in a collective bargaining agreement agency or for an employer that has a union contract with a specific union, that the employees cannot be compelled to be a member of that union, and that's all Idaho's right to work law is. Unions are required by that law to represent all employees in that bargaining unit, whether they're members or not. And so by not being a member, I carry all the rights and privileges of the collective bargaining agreement without being a member. You know, it's sold that Idaho's right to work law was sold that you have the freedom to not belong to a union, but thereby having express freedoms. And in fact, Idaho's right to work law for employees in a employment setting that are represented by a union actually lose rights. A similarity to it, let's say that I was an attorney and I belonged and wanted to be a member of the Bar Association. I can't do that without being a member and paying dues. Thereby the same thing with the Chamber of Commerce. I cannot belong to the Chamber of Commerce without paying their dues. Idaho's right to work law was an attack on organized labor, was a way to diminish the ability of organized labor unions to have strength and unity within their ranks. And that's plain and simple. The struggles come from misinformation and or miseducation on the values of and the terminology under Idaho's right to work law. Really, truly, you know, we get blackballed by a lot of folks, but we, in the best interest of the members that we represent, want that employer to succeed. And usually we're utilized as an instrument. I don't want to say as a tool, but as an instrument to help that business succeed. Every one of us understand that it is in the best interest of our employer that they're successful. Then everybody prospers. You know, I've heard other board members and other union folks say that a rising tide floats all boats. If that rising tide is in the best interest of the employer and of the employee group that work for that employer, then we should all be successful. We think about the communities in which we live and the families we represent. Those are the folks that we work for. Those folks that go to work every morning or every night, that work 24/7, or the ones that are called out at 2 in the morning to either grade the roads because the snow has fallen or somebody's hit a light pole and knock the electricity out. Those folks are the everyday neighbors with the everyday heart and desire to enrich the communities in which they live. And it's time that we in organized labor let people know that. We're not the enemy.
At a recent trade union gathering in Paris, delegates were briefed on the current status of the global economic crisis. While lack of job growth and increasing poverty were discussed, the fact is that multinational corporations are doing a great job of avoiding paying much tax on their profits no matter where they go.
The first thing that that I'll take home, and it's quite a specific thing, is the discussion we had on tax, on 250 billion US dollars tax evasion by multinationals. And our Finnish colleague described the Dutch policies on tax, the Dutch government policies on tax, as aggressively competitive. So what I'll take home, and it will be a long process, is that I will discuss with my colleagues, listen colleagues, this is how we are perceived. These $250 billion are much needed by other workers, by ourselves maybe. So can we do something about it? So it confirmed the importance of TUAC and of the meetings that we're having. I come to learn, I come to contribute, to discuss the state of the world economy and the state of the influence that workers can have on the world economy.
Much like the American bookstore, Borders, the French version of the media megastore is in trouble because of a changing business model. Employees of the store on one of the most expensive streets in the world took to the street in protest of losing their jobs. What these workers are saying is that the company saw this trend coming and good management would have diversified its services and not just turned off the lights. Ben Marcus reports from Paris.
Virgin Megastore in Paris is one of the largest music, DVD, book and video game store. It opened in 1988 on the Champs-Élysées in Paris, then expanded throughout the country. In 2013, the situation has changed regarding cultural products. Everywhere with the use of internet, downloading music, films and even books is now cheaper and easier than going to a store. Every year for the last 5 years in France, sales have gone down 15% in stores, and internet sales have gone up 21%. Not just with downloading, but also with online stores like Amazon.com. All this causing the shutdown of 6 Virgin stores this year in France, and 10 more next year. But could this have been anticipated earlier on? Other similar stores have adapted and diversified their products. Today in the Champs-Élysées, one of their main stores in Paris, employees are gathered around to protest and to bring awareness to the clients of their own situation.
Les résultats de l'entreprise étaient vraiment mauvais.
Management knew since 2004 that the market was changing and that results were very low these last months. Sales are lower, so the company is dying. But management and stockholders have wanted this situation to escalate and have the company go broke and file Chapter 11.
Catastrophique et finissent voilà en cessation de paiement devant le tribunal de commerce. 1100 emplois sont menacés.
Over 1,100 jobs could be lost for 28 stores. This particular building on the Champs-Élysées used to belong to the group Groupama Corporation and was just sold out to a Qatari corporation. This change was probably a way to accelerate the shutdown of the store. Of course, this will affect the consumer. Even if young people are buying more often online, older people still prefer buying their products in a store, especially CDs, DVDs, and games. A grandmother taking her grandchild shopping will have to change her ways. I think we can do both: downloading, buying online, and shopping in a store. We are now looking for a new investor or leave with a good compensation. This particular building on the Champs-Élysées was sold to a Qatari corporation for the amount of 500 million euros. Benjamin Marcus for Our View, Paris, France.
According to Ross Reeder, the month of October is rich with labor history.
A dear American Federation of Teachers colleague of mine once described his teaching strategy as you tell them once, you tell them again, you test them, then you tell them again. After that, it's up to them, he said, referring to his students in a community college vocational program. We've said this before, but it bears repeating. You may wonder, What is the reason for the existence of this portion of our view? Is there such a thing as labor history? Yes, there is. And to quote the late Hubert Humphrey, the famous U.S. Senator from Minnesota and Vice President for Johnson, the history of the labor movement needs to be taught in every school in this land. America is living testimonial to what free men and women organized in free democratic trade unions can do to make a life better. We ought to be proud of it. We're in the 21st century now, and some of us have a strange uneasiness. All that stuff we've known about, read about, heard about, that was all last century, and we live in a culture totally undevoted to any historical sense or long view of any particular struggle. For example, look what most of us don't know about the history of places like Iraq and Afghanistan. Looking at worker history events of October brings a strong sense of deja vu. We are in a world faced with the globalization of corporations and capital. On the 3rd of October, 1915, the World Federation of Trade Unions was formed. The International Labor Organization, ILO, an affiliate of the old League of Nations, held its first meeting in Washington, D.C. in October 1919. Along with the ILO, another organization survives, the International Confederation of Free Trade Unions, formed in the 1940s to exclude the Red Bloc unions and the WFTU. Efforts to face international worker concerns have been going on since before almost any of us were born. Also commemorated in October is the 90th anniversary of the first National Conference of Trade Union Women. In another month, in 1974, the Coalition of Trade Union Women, CLU, was formed. So even before the founding of CLU, the struggle to improve human, civil, and workplace rights for women workers was existent. People such as Joe Hill, Eleanor Roosevelt, and John Reed were born in October. The Portland Musicians formed a union in 1899. The 1929 New York stock market crash occurred. Wobblies were forced to run the gauntlet in Everett in 1916, leading to the Everett Massacre a few days later. A pretty interesting month for workers in our region, a reason to know the history of our working class.
This has been Our View, the voice of Washington's working families. We remind you, when you accept a paycheck for your hard work, you don't give up your rights. Thank you for watching. Now, here's how a skilled union construction crew removes blacktop from the roadway across Snoqualmie Pass.